Hi everyone, in this video I'll show you how to program your first Java program without any prior knowledge of Java required. Are you a beginner programmer? Then welcome, I'm glad to have you here. I'll walk you through the whole process, make it super easy to understand Java so that you'll have your first program written here within minutes. So we're going to do three main things here in this video. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Java. The second thing we're going to do is install our code editor. Then the third thing we're going to do is we're going to write our actual code. Now, our first program is going to be something that prints a statement to the screen. And then I'm going to introduce something called variables. And by the end of this video, you will have the tools to start writing your own Java programs. You'll understand some of the basic concepts of Java programs, such as the main method and variables. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Java. To do that, we're going to navigate to a web browser here, and I'm going to go ahead and Google download Java. Alternatively, you can grab a link from the description below on how to get to this same site I'm about to navigate to here. I'm going to go to Java Downloads Oracle, and what you'll see is two different versions of Java that are now available, Java 19 and 17. So what it says right here is that Java 17 LTS is the latest long-term support release for the Java Standard Edition platform. The important thing to note there is that LTS, long-term support, basically what that means is somebody like industry or company, somebody who's looking for longer-term support of a particular version of Java would choose to use this, whereas someone who's just looking for the latest and greatest version of Java may use something that's newer that isn't necessarily tied to a long-term support version. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to use the latest and greatest version of Java, which at the time of recording happens to be Java SE Development Kit 19.0.1. Now, there's one thing important here to mention, and that is I looked for download Java, but really what we're actually going to download here is the JDK, the Java Development Kit. The difference between Java and the Java Development Kit is that the Java Development Kit has additional things inside of it aside from just Java itself. It contains additional tools, namely the compiler. It contains application programming interface documentation. It also includes Java itself, the Java runtime environment. So in order to write your own Java code, what you really want is the JDK. There are three different operating systems listed here. What you'll do is you'll switch to which operating system you're currently running on. I'm running Windows. If you're running Linux or Mac, you would choose these different tabs. For me, I'm running Windows, and I'm going to go ahead and select on the x64 installer right here. Okay, now I'm going to click on it, and an installer window pops up here. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the steps here. Welcome to the installation wizard for JDK 1901. Great, so I'm going to hit next. I'm going to go ahead and hit next here as well. And now it's going to install the JDK. All right, now the JDK is successfully installed. We're going to go ahead and hit close. So that was the first thing done. Now Java is installed. Great. You have now done the minimal set of requirements in order to develop your own Java code. Great. Now the second thing we're going to do is we're going to download what's called an IDE, an integrated development environment. You could think of an IDE as similar to Microsoft Word, where Microsoft Word is a tool that we use to generate documents. Well, you could generate a document yourself without Microsoft Word, but Microsoft Word has a lot of very useful tools to make generating documents, editing them, viewing them a lot easier. IDEs are really similar when it comes to writing code. You can write code without an IDE, but if you want to write code efficiently and you want to be able to review code, refactor it, all these sorts of things, I would highly recommend using an IDE. So we're going to go back to Google. Then we're going to, this time, download IntelliJ IDE. All right, so IntelliJ IDEA is one of 3 main IDEs that the Java community regularly uses. The other ones are NetBeans and Eclipse. Then IntelliJ is that third one there. IntelliJ is the one that I'm going to use for this video. You can choose to use whichever code editor IDE you prefer, but if you're a beginner and you want to follow along with exactly what I'm doing, I'd recommend that you download IntelliJ IDEA with me. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put a link to this also in the description below, but for now I'm going to go ahead and click on this first link from Google. And what we see here is the Ultimate versus Community Edition option. So kind of like how when we installed the JDK, there was a question on which operating system you're running. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run on Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the download button for IntelliJ Community Edition. All right, now that that's downloaded, I'm going to go ahead and click on it like I did the JDK last time. All right, now we've got an installation wizard for IntelliJ IDEA. So we'll go ahead and select next to continue. The default install location is just fine. We'll hit next. We don't need to select any of these here, so we'll hit next and we'll hit install. So while that's installing, fun fact for you, IntelliJ IDEA actually means something. IntelliJ refers to intelligent Java, and IDEA, you can see that there. It's IDE, Integrated Development Environment, and then the extra A was actually tacked on because it's a different word, IDEA, and because the creators of the IntelliJ IDEA thought it was a good idea to have an intelligent Java IDE. Funny how that works, huh? All right, now as easy as that, the IntelliJ IDEA is installed. I'm going to go ahead and run IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition and click Finish. Now the first prompt that comes up when you first install the IDEs, it asks you if you want to import any settings. Go ahead and select Do Not Import Settings and hit OK. All right, now the main window came up here and it says Welcome to the IDE, the IDEA here, and we're going to go ahead and select on New Project. All right, so this is your first Java program. So let's call this My First Program. And for me, I have a place that I like to put my code right there. You may have a different place that you want it on your file system. That's where I'm going to put it for mine. We're going to use the Java language with the IntelliJ build system, and we're going to use JDK 19, which is what we just installed. I'm going to deselect the add sample code so that I can explain as I'm writing the code what it's doing. And then I'm going to hit create. Great. So what IntelliJ just did is it created a lot of project data, but it didn't write any of the code for us. So now we've got to add some code. So what we need to do is we need to add a file that contains the code that we want to run. So what we're going to do is we're going to add source code. So we need to go into this src, which stands for source directory. We're going to right click, select new Java class. For now, you can think of a Java class as a Java file that executes code. We're going to go ahead and call this My First Program. And now IntelliJ made a class for us called My First Program, which is also called myfirstprogram.java. Now, what this just did for us is it created a class, but there's no actual code running within the class. We just have these brackets here indicating that there should be something in here, but no actual code yet. The next thing we do is we need to add some code that Java is actually going to run for us. The easiest way to do that is to create what's called a special main method. A method is a block of code that runs within a class, and the main method is a special type of method that tells Java, hey, this is where the program is supposed to start. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to write the main method. And then within the main method, I'm going to have one line of code that prints text to the screen. After that works and I show you how to run it so you can see what the running code looks like, I'll explain how it works. To add the main method, you want to type out public static void main string args. And then to print out some text, I'm going to print that out right here, and then I'm going to hit this little run button. That was a lot very quickly, but as IntelliJ is building this and is going to run this, it's going to show the output in the console right down here, and there it is. So what we just did is you wrote your first program. Woohoo! That's awesome. Your first program printed this text to the screen. As you can see here, hello world is what you printed in these double quotes. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the text within here to some other text. And we'll show that when we run this code, the text is going to change. Some other text. There you go. So you can see that what we're printing directly within here results in the output that you get right here. So now that you have seen how we can print hello world to the screen and how we can change that and print something else to the screen, let's talk through a little bit how this program is constructed. Starting from the top, and we'll go all the way down. So the first thing you'll notice is it says no usages right here. This is actually IntelliJ telling us this, because if you look over here just to the left a little bit, you can see these line numbers. These line numbers are the actual line numbers of your myfirstprogram.java file. The no usages indications here are inserted and are actually part of your program. This is a note from IntelliJ giving you a warning, hey, I don't see any usage of this in your program. And that's okay, because the main method is a little bit special, where no other part of your program uses the main method. Java uses the main method. So the no usages are actually okay in this case. But I just wanted to explain why you would see no usages in front of this class and in front of the main method here. So going into how the class is declared, first thing you'll see here is the public keyword. And it's a keyword because it's orange. You could think of public as, it's called an access modifier in Java. It's a way that we indicate what level of access the following element is given in the context of our program. This is a public class, meaning if I had other files or if I had other classes of Java code in this program, they would have access to this class. That's why it's called public. Then we have the class keyword right here. We talked about what a class is. And then we have the name of our class, my first program. You'll notice here that we're using upper camel case. That's where the first letter of each word is capitalized. We do that intentionally because that's the naming convention that the Java community uses for Java files and class names. The next thing that comes after that is a curly bracket. So the curly bracket has a left bracket and a right bracket. Those two together indicate everything that's within the class. So you can see the left bracket is highlighted here and the right bracket is highlighted here. That means that all of this is contained within the myFirstProgram class. So now we go down to the main method. Like the myFirstProgram class, it is declared public. That static keyword means something special. I won't go into the details too much during this video because it's a slightly more complicated keyword. But the gist of it is that the static keyword means that the method belongs to the class rather than an instance of the class. The second thing here we've got, this is what's called the return type of the method. So I talked about how a method is a block of code that executes a particular function. Think of a simple method would be adding two numbers together. Let's say you've got number 1 and number 2. And now you want to have those two numbers added together. And then you want to return that as a result of your method when your method is done completing. So what you need to indicate is what is the return type of my method so that if somebody uses my method, I know what to return them. In the case of the main method, you return nothing. So that's why you use this void keyword here. Then we go to the actual method name, which is called main. Then you have these parentheses. Within the parentheses, you have string args. What this means is when you run a program in Java, you can pass in arguments to it. I'm currently not passing in any arguments into this program, so the args actually doesn't have anything in it. But in order for Java to understand that this is the main method, I have to indicate to Java that it takes in that args parameter right there. Otherwise, it wouldn't understand this was the main method. So like the curly braces we had around a class definition, we also have curly braces around a method. The curly braces denote everything that goes into the method. And like we talked about earlier, everything that goes in the main method is now executable Java code. So we know that this line of code is printing this text to our screen. So let's talk about what it's doing at a high level. We're using the system.out.println function, and we're adding parentheses, and then we're passing in this text. This is the text that gets printed to the screen. And the other thing we do at the end of every executable logical-based line of code in Java that isn't a loop or things like that is we add a semicolon. That indicates to Java that we're done with our thought. So what we've got here is print to the screen this text. Now, if you're looking at code all day, you can sometimes get a little tired trying to decipher what the code is meaning. Developers have a way of communicating amongst each other to indicate what the code is doing, and that is via comments. In Java, there are two ways you can write comments. The first one is if you add 2 slashes. Now, everything I'm about to type is not going to be executed by Java. This is indicating comment 1, but that's not very useful. So I'm going to instead comment this to be something that somebody would actually find useful. All right, that's better. So here I'm reminding myself via comment what this line of code is doing. Comments are really useful, and as a programmer, you should get used to commenting your code well. The other way you can write a comment is by adding a forward slash and then an asterisk. The difference between the double slash and the single slash and then the asterisk is that anything following the asterisk is now a comment, even new lines afterward. And how I end it is with an asterisk and then another forward slash. You can see that IntelliJ, when I hit enter, adds in additional asterisks here. That's for more of a pretty look. That's not actually necessary to get the comment to be a comment. That's more of something to make the code look more aesthetically pleasing when you've got a comment that spans multiple lines. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that comment. Now we've got our original comment. All right, so now that we have shown how to print text to the screen and write comments in our code, now let's talk about how to use some variables. So what I want to do next is I'm going to create a variable that's going to hold the value of the text that I want to print to the screen. That variable needs to have a type. The type of text in Java is called a string. A string you can think of as a string of characters that are all connected together. So my variable type is a string. The name of my variable is my first variable. And now I'm going to set it equal to the text that we want to print. And now, instead of having to duplicate this text in two places, I'm going to use my first variable. So what this line of code is doing here is we talked about how this is a string. My first variable, that's the name, it is equal to this value, and end with a semicolon. Note that the variable name is lower camel case. That's the naming convention that is used for variables where all words except for the first word have an upper first letter. Classes have upper camel case, variables have lower camel case. Methods actually have lower camel case as well, but I don't have an example method that has multiple words concatenated together. If we were to update the main method, we would do so like that. But the problem is Java specifically needs it to be called main. If I run this code, now it prints some other text now. So that is a string variable. Let's say we want to do some basic number arithmetic. Let's say that I want to have two integer numbers, and I want to print them both out. So I'm going to declare an integer. The way I do that in Java is I need to declare the type of the variable first. That's called int. And then now I'm going to have a name for it, num1. And let's go ahead and set this to 9. Then I'm going to make another integer, num2, with a value of 7. So like we did with a string, we do a similar thing with integers where we declare the type is int, we give it a name, equals value, end with a semicolon. The difference between integers and strings, one thing you can see here is that int is a keyword, whereas string is not. The reason for that is because int is what is called a primitive type, whereas string is called a reference type. In a future video, I'll discuss all the various primitive types that Java has to offer, and then talk about the difference between primitive types and reference types. So now that we have two numbers, let's go ahead and print out num1. And by the way, if you want to hit the run button up here, there's a keyboard shortcut, which on Windows is Shift plus F10. One thing in general that's really nice about IntelliJ is that if you hover over various icons and you start doing things repetitively, what you'll find is there are often hotkeys that allow you to get something done a lot faster. So in the case of the run button, all you have to do is hit Shift F10. And look here, we told Java to print num1, and we can see we have a value of 9 right there. Let's change this to 2. We'll hit Shift F10 again to run the code. And now we have 7. Okay, but I already knew that num2 was 7. Why don't we go ahead and add these two together? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the value of num1 plus num2, and that is 16. Let's say that I want to store the value of num1 and num2 getting added together. I'm going to create a third variable called num3, which holds the value of num1 plus num2. Now I'm going to print num3, and it should be 16 again. All right, there it is. All right, so now we have shown how variables work and how you can store the value of a operation into another variable, and then you can print that new variable. Now we're going to make the final change to our first program. We're going to print some text and then a number afterward. So we're going to change this text, and the number is, we're going to add this space here because we're going to add the number afterward. Now, another thing about IntelliJ that's really nice is when you start typing in a variable or something that your program knows of that the IDE can figure out, it will autocomplete for you, so I don't have to type the rest of this. I should have to hit enter. Now I'm going to add these two together. Now, what do you think adding a string and an integer together is going to do? Look at that. It printed out the whole string together. So what we just did is we concatenated a string and an integer all into one string there. Very good. All right. Now I'll show a couple more examples of other things that Java can do with basic integer arithmetic. So first I'll show a neat little trick in IntelliJ, which is if you don't want to print system.out.println all the time, type sout, then hit tab, and now you have that auto-completed for you. So let's do num1 times num2. This should equal 63, but hey, I can do 9 times 7 a lot faster than Java can. It took a few seconds there for Java to compile and run that. You say, okay, well, can you do 9 times 7 times num3 divided by pi? I doubt you can beat Java on this one. All right, 320.85636. As you can see, Java can do a lot of things for us. And I promise you, this is only scratching the top little surface of the plethora of things that Java has to offer. Congratulations! You just wrote your first Java program. Now you have the tools to write your own Java programs. And we've talked about things like how code executes in the Java main method and how you can write variables and assign output of expressions to variables. In the future, I will go into a lot more detail into additional things that Java can do over a series of videos that will be coming out over time. I hope this video was helpful for you guys. Please, if you liked it, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for future videos so you never miss new content. Also, please feel free to drop a comment below if you have any questions, thoughts, comments on the video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Take care.